it's really interesting with the data, because I've had clients who think they're relaxing, but actually aren't. There was this one client who was chronically stressed, really, and she wore the monitor and she had 3 hours in the evening where she was relaxing, and it was all high stress. So I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Oh, I was watching TV." I said, "Oh, right, crikey, was that a horror movie? What were you watching?" And she was watching the Antiques Roadshow. Her body was just not able to switch off.
If you've ever had a wearable device on your wrist, a watch that does more than just tell the time, it's probably tracking more than you think. But what does it tell us, and how much should it guide us? Heart rate variability, or HRV, one of the extras wearables can track, has become one of those terms that gets thrown around a lot, especially in fitness and wellness circles. But what does it actually tell us? And is it useful for anyone other than elite athletes? My guest today, Sophia Hodges, a health coach and founder of Human Energy Optimization, works with people, mostly busy midlife women, using data combined with tracking their lifestyle to reveal what's going on beneath the surface. She uses the data to see whether her clients are actually recovering from the events in their day or just going through the motions of relaxing. We talk about why rest and recovery aren't necessarily the same thing, what underlying chronic stress is doing to the body, and how to start tuning in, with or without a monitor. I think this one will make you look at how and when you rest differently, and possibly your ironing too. So a few years ago, my husband bought me a watch that has more gadgets and gizmos than a normal watch. And it's a Garmin, for full disclosure. And on that, obviously, there's loads of useful things. But one of the things that I'd never had before was a sleep score, a sleep tracker. And at that point in my life, my sleep had absolutely gone through perimenopause. So all it did for me was sort of reinforce how bad my sleep was compared to his, because he wanted to know the score every morning. And then the other thing that was on there is HRV, so heart rate variability, which I confess I still know very little about, but I'm quite fascinated by it. One of the reasons is because my husband particularly notices, he can see, his I think is more sensitive than mine, he can see when he's getting ill by his HRV. And, you know, I'm not at that stage yet, and maybe I haven't got the depth and the detail. But I'm really fascinated about how this can help us rather than how we can obsess over it, but also what it says generally about our health and well-being. So I have got Sophia Hodges in today to speak to me, because this is an area that she specializes in, not just HRV, but what that and other metrics say about how someone's living their life and what is affecting them negatively and positively. So if we can start, Sophia, with just a bit of what is HRV, just in simplistic terms, I think that'd be really useful.
So heart rate variability is a measure, it gives us insight into your nervous system. What it actually is the variation beat to beat of your heart. So your heart rate might be 60 beats per minute. That doesn't mean that you're having a beat every second. It might be 0.8 of a second, 1.1 of a second. And the more variation there is in your heart rate, then that gives us an indication that you're in a more rested and recovery state.
Okay.
And then where the heart rate variability is low, so much or more metronomic of a heartbeat, then that would indicate that you're in a stress state. And so we can use heart rate variability to see how the body is responding to stress and recovery activities.
Yeah, it's fascinating because also I noticed on the watch that there's kind of it does a band, and it looks at a weekly band. So it's sort of a weekly average to sort of broaden it out. What I still don't quite understand is that my average is very different to my husband's. Obviously, we have very different bodies, but I presume it's the same with every individual. Is a higher or lower number better, or is it all about just your own band and what your normal is?
Yeah. So heart rate variability, you really can't compare with other people. Okay. What we're really interested in is the trend for you. And high doesn't necessarily mean good, low doesn't necessarily mean bad, because it's all about context. If you have low HRV immediately after an exercise session, well, that's kind of normal. That's what you'd expect. Okay. And then gradually it's going to increase. But if you have low heart rate variability and you're just resting, then, that's probably not so good. So it's very much down to the context and down to the individual. Some people are genetically going to have a higher or lower heart rate variability than someone else. So you really can't, compete in this with your husband.
Good. I'm really pleased. I will feed that back. And so obviously it's also people might have found out about it through the context of those that work with athletes. And obviously with an athlete, there is, so many metrics that are measured. Literally all the inputs in their life basically are measured. And when there's changes, they're watching it, what happens with their performance and so on. So for those who are not deeming themselves as athletes, as mere mortals, what do you think that looking at HRV is most beneficial for?
I think a lot of people jump to the idea because of the way the athletes use HRV as it's a performance metric. But actually, in us normal people, it's actually, as I said, it's a window into the nervous system. It's how the body is coping with life. And so it's as relevant for an athlete as it is for, a lawyer who's on 5 hours sleep, or, a woman in perimenopause. So it's giving us an indication of where we are physiologically and how the body is responding.
Yeah, which I think we'd all like to know more ultimately, and especially in certain stages of life, because as I explained, my perimenopausal journey, the thing that made me realize I was at that moment in life was just that my sleep just suddenly fell off a cliff. I'd been 8 hours a night like a log, happily. I just never questioned it. I was really lucky, apart from obviously when I was having kids and breastfeeding through the night and that kind of thing. But, generally I could rely on it, and it was never a thing. And then it just went, and I was just awake for hours in the middle of the night, and it was really tough. And one of the things that I found hardest about that was all the messaging out there about how important sleep is and sleep hygiene. And you've got it. And I was doing all the things, to my mind. I was, making sure I was wearing my glasses to watch the TV so that I wasn't getting in certain colors of light. I don't know what. I was making sure that I was, having no screens for blah, blah. We knew all the things. But that wasn't affecting, it was my hormones that needed fixing, which luckily for me, I was able to go and get some help. And that has hugely helped. It's still not perfect by any means. But yeah, I think this is what's most important about these metrics, but also to try and change the story about the fact that it's only useful when you are someone who exercises loads, because that's that performance link. And that's what I really, really wanted to talk to you about. You are working with lots of metrics in your work. Before we dive into kind of the more full package than just HRV, tell me how you got into this work.
I've had quite a squiggly career. I started off in corporate social responsibility. I worked in a global investment bank managing some of their charity programs and employee engagement, and then worked freelance for a little bit, and then had my 2 children. And a few years after that, after sort of beating myself up for not working, as you do, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something different, and I've always loved fitness, and I thought, well, I know I'll become a personal trainer, and that'll just be a nice bit of pocket money alongside, being a mother and all, running the house. And I sort of thought of it as a bit of a hobby job. And as soon as I started doing it, it became an absolute passion. And I was so interested in corrective strategies for people's dodgy knees or hip complaints and that sort of thing. So I got really into anatomy, physiology, nutrition, functional movement, and became really quite a nerd. And I studied the whole time. There wasn't a time I wasn't doing a course or, reading books, consuming podcasts, just completely obsessed about it. And in doing that, and in the experience of having people in the gym, through a number of different ways, I ended up doing what I'm doing. Partly just through the nerdy fascination, but also just the clients I was dealing with in the gym they had some sort of areas of their life that really needed attention. And in my sort of hour or two a week in the gym, there wasn't, I felt like there was so much more I could help them with. So take, for example, this lady, Jane. She arrived, she was 45. She messaged me saying, I'm really struggling with motivation, anxiety. I know I need to move more and be more healthy, help, she was 45. She was a bit overweight. She was on antidepressants. She had IBS, and she'd just been diagnosed with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And I asked her, one of my first questions, as part of my sort of onboarding thing is, I asked people, what did you eat in the last 24 hours? And is that normal?
Yeah.
And she had eaten Jordan's cereal am I allowed to say that?
Yeah, totally.
Jordan's cereal for breakfast. And then I think the same for lunch, and then had a cup of tea and a Kit Kat in the afternoon. And then in the evening, she'd had a pizza and a Pepsi. And what I discovered is that nobody had ever asked her about her diet. She even said that she didn't eat bananas because her boss said that they were too carby. I mean, she laughs about this today, but and so and nobody talked to her about menopause.
Right.
She's 45.
Yeah.
She's on antidepressants. She's put on extra weight. She's anxious. And she was not the only client who was in this position. I had a lot of women in that sort of age bracket, sort of 40 to 55 or so, as well as men and other people. So where was I going with that? It was not uncommon. And so how I ended up where I am is the sort of combination of the knowledge and the things that I was studying. I did this course in practical stress resilience coaching, which is where I started really getting into heart rate variability and the autonomic nervous system. And then, I've done courses in menopause and all sorts. So that sort of combination of the working with people, seeing the need and having the knowledge and trying to put the two together. So that's
and I love the fact that it's you can therefore look at the whole picture. It's holistic. Yeah. It's not I've got something, coming in, I've got something wrong with my X, and then can I just treat the X? Because it's never about just the X. It's always about everything before, around, and so on. So I think that must be, I presume, hugely satisfying for you, because then you get to deep dive. And I presume there's also surprises along the road where people think it's one thing and actually there's other things that contribute.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, stress plays such a huge part in people's health or ill health. And I think it still doesn't get enough attention, really. It's the underlying cause, really, of so many illnesses. And if you think of how we used to get ill and die in olden days, it was kind of, flu and things that would just come and hit us, whereas today it's all these lifestyle diseases. It's cardiovascular, it's metabolic dysfunction like diabetes, it's dementia and strokes, and so much of that is down to the sort of underlying factor of stress.
So tell us a bit more about stress then, because there is so much talk about stress. So let's come back. So just to give a little bit of insight to the listener, when you work with people, you're going to say this, in reality, I'm doing my sort of basic thin layer of knowledge. When you do, you are tracking them for a certain period, whilst also finding out what's happening in their life during that period, to be able to understand what the data is saying, because it's part of the whole picture. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. So what I do at Human Energy Optimization is my clients get given a monitor. They get given a heart rate variability monitor, and it's a sort of clinical grade one. We wear it on the chest with little sticky electrodes, and they wear it just for about 3 days, 1 to 5 days at a time. Whilst they're wearing it, they can journal what they're doing in the app that comes with it. The technology is from First Beat Technologies. That's who I use. And whilst they're wearing it, they journal what they're doing. And then at the end of the measurement period, we get some fantastic graphs that show us whether their body is in that stress, fight or flight state, or rest and recovery, sort of almost minute by minute throughout the day. And we can see that against what they're doing in the day, what meeting they're going to, or what exercise they're doing, or and so it gives us real insight into, how quickly does the body recover after that stressful meeting, or when you relax in the evening, are you actually physiologically relaxing, or is your body still in that stress state? And so if it is still in that stress state, what can we do to bring that down? And how can we make sure that the activities that you're doing that you think are recovery are actually restorative recovery? And throughout the night, we can see. So rather than, for example, I think a lot of health trackers will show you how much REM sleep, how much, light sleep, and all of that you get. This is more about the quality of recovery throughout the night, and you can see at which point, because you've got two systems of your nervous system, your autonomic nervous system. So you've got the sort of alert, it's called the sympathetic. It's the fight or flight response, where everything speeds up. It's a bit like putting your foot on the accelerator pedal. And then you've got the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest. And these are two sort of different parts of that nervous system. And they kind of work together. Like there's always one that's dominant at any one time. Okay.
But they're both on. So it's not one or the other.
No, they can't. Yeah. So they're both doing something all the time, but one is more dominant than the other, just to put it simply. And so we can see very often with my clients, when they start with me, the first few hours of sleep might be still, they might still be in that fight or flight alert state. And what we really want is really good deep sleep in the first few hours of the night.
Yeah.
So we sort of use all this information to kind of make better decisions.
So to understand, you've used the word recovery a few times. So in these terms, you're not talking necessarily just about recovery from when we've been very physical, so doing heavier exercise and so on. You're talking also, correct me if I'm wrong, about sort of recovery from stressful situations as well.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm talking about recovery, I'm talking about a state that we physiologically have to enter. And it's a state of repair, restoring your cells and your everything in your body, and sort of down regulation. So it's things that kind of drive calm and basically restore our energy.
Yeah, which often when you're, as you've talked about, some people are constantly on the go. They are juggling all the things. They're incredibly busy. They may have a stressful job, or they just may have lots and lots of responsibilities that are pulling them. So they're not as able to invest in themselves. And they're not getting that chance to recover. And that's what you're saying is harmful in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're constantly in that more stress state, your heart's beating faster, your blood pressure is higher, and you're just expending energy all the time, and your energy is required for everything that it's basically the sort of the currency of our function. And so whether we're digesting food, moving, our sort of hormone regulation, our temperature control, all these different functions in our body all require the same energy. And so if it's always spent on cognitive load, then, it kind of explains why, for example, some people might have reproductive problems. When we're in that fight or flight response, take us back to evolution, chased by a saber-toothed tiger or something, then your body's, it's not critical to survival to be digesting your food or to be reproducing or to be, so those systems get shut down because you've got to deal with the current threat, because otherwise you're not going to live to need to digest food anyway.
Yeah. No, and you can see in our current modern world that's so far from that hunter-gatherer reality, sadly. I'm just taking a quick break to share something I'm really proud of. My book, Move Well for Life, which is now officially out in the world. I wrote this book because so many people, despite feeling like they're doing all the right things, exercising enough, being active, and generally looking after themselves, come to me still feeling stiff, restricted, or worried about what aging might mean for their bodies. This book helps make sense of why that happens, and more importantly, what you can do differently. The book is not a workout plan to blindly follow and hope it will stick. It's a practical, reassuring guide about learning how to move better in your own daily life. We look at how you sit, walk, get up and down, reach, rest and move in the many in-between hours, so the way you move actually supports you for the long term. As Kay Cleave, known as Aging Disgracefully on Instagram, put it, this is the book we all need to read, especially as we age, to help us enjoy moving our amazing bodies. And Rosie Nixon, author, speaker and editor, described it as a life-changing book for anyone looking to live better for longer. The book is accompanied by a handy downloadable template for the everyday movement plan we work through in the book, touching on all 6 principles of the Move Well Wheel framework and helping you apply the changes to create long-term habits using the Everyday Ease method. You can buy Move Well for Life now on Amazon, Waterstones and bookshop.org. You can also request it through your local independent bookshop or your local library. And just to share one more endorsement that made me feel really proud, GP Susan Tahiri, a previous podcast guest on Make Movement Matter, said, "This is definitely a book I'll be recommending to my patients." If you want a kinder, accessible, and more sustainable way to move, one that actually fits the life you live, this book is for you. Now, let's get back to the episode. The demands on us, and particularly within the pace of technological change and the sort of expectation of, responding to things super quickly, the fact we have so much more information coming at us all the time, and we're having to, the cognitive overload just from the sort of what's deemed as everyday communication. And yet, literally 10 years ago, the pace was so much slower. And even then it felt a lot because it was so much more than, clearly showing my age. I've just shown my 1974 t-shirt there. But, 10 years before that, we were just having emails. So the pace and all of that is adding on to what we're experiencing in life anyway, in terms of, have we got sick parents that we're looking after? Have we got kids who have got emotional needs, and etc. So
and with where AI is going as well, the idea that it's going to free up our time is a complete delusion.
Yeah, it's just making things faster, isn't it?
Faster, exactly.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Talking about like how there's just so many demands, and my typical client base are women who are likely have younger dependents, older dependents, a fast-paced job, or just a lot going on at home, even if they're not working. The
sandwich generation, as we're called. Yeah. So what in the work that you come across when you work with people, do people have misconceptions about, let's say, about what recovery is particularly, and what rest really is, and how to create rest in their bodies?
Yeah, so it's really interesting with the data because, I've had clients who think they're relaxing, but actually aren't. So I've got some great examples that I use sometimes in talks. There was this one client who she was chronically stressed, really, and she wore the monitor, and she had 3 hours in the evening where she was relaxing, and it was all high stress. This was her first baseline measurement with me.
And what would she describe? So what was she doing for that relaxing?
So I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Oh, I was watching TV." I said, "Oh, right, crikey. Was that a horror movie? What were you watching?" And she was watching the Antiques Roadshow. Oh, wow. Do you really care very much about what the price is? Or what is this moment? But no, she her body was just not able to switch off.
So it was stuck. It was stuck in that high level.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's like one client who, was stuck in that elevated state. And so the strategy for, improving this was to build in moments of recovery in her day, whether that was just stopping, sitting down for a cup of tea, or whether it was just taking 2 minutes to just breathe, or a little walk in nature when she can. And we worked on a number of different things that she could be doing just to kind of down regulate. And if you have little breaks throughout the day, it just brings you back down and trains the nervous system to just, come back down. And then it means that when it comes to relaxing in the evening, you can do it more efficiently. I've had other examples where, in fact, I'll be honest, it's my own.
Great, love it.
And I was interested to see, I always thought that doing the ironing in front of the telly in the evening was a really relaxing thing to do. And
oh no, that would have my stress through the roof. I hate ironing.
But anyway, so I was doing some ironing and I finished the basket and then I put the iron down, sat down on the sofa, and I tracked in the app what I was doing. And when I looked at the results, I was absolutely in a stressed state when I was doing the ironing. And when I stopped, sat down and just relaxed watching the telly, not multitasking, my body was instantly into a recovery state. And it's quite interesting. And then, like, having had that insight from the data, I was like, yeah, well, actually, if I really truly think about it, yeah, I feel so much more relaxed when.
Which is so interesting, because then, because you've got the data, it's making you look at how you felt more closely, and perhaps questioning what you think is, oh, I'm okay with that. You know, I'm all right. I'm functioning okay. The data says otherwise. It forces you to then think, am I really? And even for you, you're like, yeah, if I really think about it, my gut and everything was telling me that I wasn't fully relaxed. But that's, for me, that's the mind over the body. So that's the brain saying, oh, I'm okay. I just need to get this done. You know, this isn't hard, this isn't taxing. And this is where I want to then segue slightly into movement, because this is the problem. I think one of the huge problems in our world is the high pressure on, when you exercise, it has to be all in. You have to be super sweaty, and you have to, you know, every time you choose to exercise, that it's got to be big. And my argument is, I love to do some big, but also to learn that movement through the day, just like you're saying, moments and breaks of movement that are not hugely taxing, but where you're actually coming out of your brain and your thoughts, and you're just thinking and feeling how your body feels. That's why I get people rolling around on the ground, because then you kind of almost, your nervous system also almost goes back to childhood as well. It kind of resets, because there's this feeling of, oh, I'm sort of safe because I'm on the ground. It gives lovely feedback to the body, touching the body in a way that you don't when you're upright. But that's really beneficial. And so I have this constant struggle about, just because the benefits aren't, your heart rate's not through the roof and you're not building masses of muscle, there are other benefits. And tell me what you think about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it kind of ties into one of the points that I love to make, is a lot of my clients feel like they don't have time. That's the problem. They don't have time. And I always say, time is not your limiting factor. The limiting factor is your own expectation. It's the idea that you've got to go to the gym 3 times a week for an hour. And if you think like that, and you are one of these typically incredibly busy people with a lot of plates spinning, that is completely unrealistic. Yeah. And carrying on thinking that that's what you need to do without actually doing it is just getting you nowhere.
Yeah.
And actually, if we can just play down that expectation of actually just fitting it into your life in a realistic, practical way, then you're going to manage your nervous system better. You're going to get the exercise. You're going to stop worrying about not getting exercise. And so I have all sorts of different strategies of bringing that movement in. And that could be doing squats, 10 squats between client calls, or I'm sure you share these kind of things with your clients about, doing your teeth on one foot, standing on one leg whilst you brush your teeth, or and then it's movement as well. But the expectation idea, the idea that we're limited by our expectation, goes through exercise, but also how we think about food, or how we think about hanging out with our friends. This idea of, oh, I've got to find half an hour to call a friend. You don't. You could ring them when you've got like 3 minutes between, walking from A to B, and just say, hi, I've only got 3 minutes, but I wanted to say hi.
By setting the expectation.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and coming back to movement, then yeah, absolutely. If you can be realistic about it, you're going to get so much more. And that's got to be good in a kind of incredibly busy, sedentary life.
Yeah, of course. Every next move is your best move, ultimately.
Yeah.
However, you also need to recover, and that's the point: is how do we find the balance for us? Now, obviously, you've got with your clients, you've got this wealth of data, which is telling you so much about the individuals. But looking across all the individuals that you work with, are there any sort of general trends, any patterns that people who haven't got the ability to sort of get a hold of that data that we can learn from?
Yeah, quite a lot, actually. And I don't always use the data, sometimes it's just, and I say to people like that the magic is in the coaching, actually. The data is good for insight, and it can help us make different decisions or have, it's just a little extra information that we wouldn't otherwise have. And the other thing is that we shouldn't get too hooked up on HRV, because actually there are so many different factors that play into it. Yeah. So we always take that data with a little bit of, yes, with context, but also a little bit of like, well, hang on, there could be other things playing into this. And
as you said before, the importance is then being able to use that to help you to tune in to what you probably know already. You're just not perhaps uncovering it, and as being as honest with yourself about it. And if you can learn to find that honesty because you're kind of being taught this new language, then it's a great opening, a great awareness.
It makes the invisible visible. It's validatory. It will validate how, if you're or it will challenge, it can validate that you're feeling really, you're under strain, but it can also challenge
that ironing isn't relaxing.
Exactly. So it just helps you kind of understand what you have, understand your capacity, really.
So any general trends?
Oh, sorry. General trends. I got distracted. Yes. I mean, a big one is, and something that people who do have the data are always like, wow, is drinking alcohol.
I bet.
And its impact on sleep.
Oh, yes.
And I would never say stop all alcohol. And people worry that, if I come to you, I'll get told that I can't have another drink. I'm like, no, I love my gin and tonic. But it's understanding what an impact that does have on your quality of recovery in sleep. And to see it in the data. I mean, this data comes up in beautifully easy illustration of green and red. Green is recovery, red is stress, and blue is exercise. And it comes in as a bar chart. So you can see to what extent you are, your body is stressed or recovering. And so when you see the red in your sleep affected by alcohol, that it can be really really motivating, really empowering.
And I think it's, if you don't have the data, I think we all know that a hangover, there's a huge proportion of that is the fact that you have not slept really effectively, especially if you've drunk too much. You've had so little recovery that, you're feeling awful, partly because of a lack of sleep, because we can have the same test where we sleep badly and we feel like we've got a hangover the next day and we didn't drink a thing. Because we just know it just makes us feel rubbish. I'm very in tune with my sleep and I know how much I need it. And certainly when I don't sleep, it absolutely changes the whole sphere. So I know I hardly drink anything anymore because I just can't take it. In fact, I used to work in the wine trade and I can't touch wine. It makes me, again, middle of the night, horrendous. So it's tequila only, which people sort of say, what? how is that possible? But it's actually, it's quite a clean spirit. But I also know that even if I'm thinking, oh, I'm good to enjoy a night out, if I haven't had a good run into that night out, I will now still choose not to drink, because I know that there'll be a double impact.
Yeah.
And so choosing when to drink based on that, because I'm now in tune with it, but I'm sure that the data helps with that as well.
It really does. And it just helps with awareness. And, for myself, I love to have a drink, but when I'm going through a very stressful period and I need to just, keep everything spinning, I won't drink, because I know that it's just not going to help my energy levels. But if I am, feeling full of energy, then, and there's a party to go to, then yes, I'll get stuck in and I might have a great night.
Exactly.
I mean, have a great night without booze as well, but
yeah. But it's your choice.
It's a choice, and it's knowing what it does to, and whether you have capacity for it or not.
Yeah.
So that would be one trend. The other trend that I see across clients is, and the shock that they feel, is how little they move throughout the day. And the impact on their sleep on the days that they take exercise, go for a walk or whatever. And that can have a really
beneficial, you mean? Yeah.
Really positive impact on.
So what is that dynamic then? Because people would kind of say, oh yeah, so I've sort of tired myself out, so therefore I can sleep. But that's actually not correct, is it? Because the only reason I say it is because I remember from having babies, particularly, they needed to have good rest through the day to sleep well at night.
Yeah.
If they missed naps, they slept worse.
Yes.
And I think we're the same as adults.
Yes.
We're not napping, but we need those naps, in inverted commas, those moments of relaxation to be able to sleep well. So what does the exercise, how does that affect it?
So exercise is a stress. Yeah. And exercise is only beneficial when it is paired with recovery. If you think of what happens in an exercise session, you're literally damaging your muscles, you're tearing muscle fibers. And the way your muscles grow bigger is tearing them up in an exercise session and then recovering, and your cells will, repair and your muscles rebuild and grow stronger. And it's a sort of survival mechanism of going, the body saying, oh, crikey, that was something I had to deal with. Better be prepared next time. And it will prepare you. It's kind of basically adapting you for better future outcomes.
Yeah.
So I've lost my train of thought. What was that?
But that I love what you've just said there. Preparing your body for better future outcomes. And that's not, I have to bring it back to my stuff. It's not just exercise, it's moving. Because every time you are moving, you are giving that input to your body to say, this is a need, as you've just said, need for the future potentially. And therefore it's adapting each time. And hence, if you don't use a range of motion, for example, in your hips, if you're rarely rotating your hips, loading them, rotating, etc., your body's not going to waste the energy to rebuild a movement that it doesn't see itself as needing. And that's very specific. But if you're talking more generally about just, and I was going to ask actually, and does this also include the heart muscle? Because it is a muscle.
Sorry, what does...
In terms of using it and then needing to recover so that it's more effective in the future. Is that the same sort of thing, or is it different?
Yeah, so this is like cardiovascular, this is improving your fitness and your so yes, it is certainly
So it's fitness, because we were using the word strength before and so on, and I wanted to sort of make sure it was more of a holistic strength, fitness, resilience for the future, rather than just muscular, if you see what I mean.
Absolutely.
It's fascinating. It's super fascinating. So any tips that we can give to the audience about how, without having to measure, because we can't expect that. And I just have to chip in here, as you were talking, my 10,000 step goal thing went on my watch, and I thought, how apt, but also how funny, because I'm standing still. And all I was doing was waving my hand a little. You see, that's perfect evidence that these things are really not that accurate.
Exactly.
And therefore we have to take everything with a big pinch of salt. A bit like also if I lose some sleep in the night and I quickly turn on the light and read for a bit to try and change my mental setting, to help me to relax again, to go back off to sleep. And I know I've been awake for, maybe an hour and a half, and my watch says very different and gives you a lovely high score. And I'm thinking, that is not right.
Yeah.
But that's knowing it, isn't it? That's the point. That's not obsessing, knowing it's not always right, and just taking it with a big pinch of salt and saying, okay, I'm doing okay.
Yeah. Exactly.
So sorry, going back to the sort of more practical things. And I think everyone knows that exercise is beneficial in general, but also I would like to focus practically on how to recover better, and when we know we need recovery that perhaps we're not tuning into at the moment.
So sorry, I don't understand what the question is.
So when people are wondering if they're recovering well, because they don't know, because they can't track it with data, what they should do, what's a general advice and practical tips for people to know how best to relax and recover?
So firstly, I'd say notice where you are, notice how you feel, and just stop. Just take time to just think about, what does your body actually need right now? Does it need to go and do a 10K run and do it fast, or actually do you not have much energy, and would it be better to do a yoga session, or and we don't have to talk about exercise sessions, but there's so many different things you can do for recovery, looking at your stress and recovery, your physical activity, your nutrition, because of course nutrition can cause unnecessary inflammation through having high blood sugar or having these ultra processed foods and things that cause inflammation in the body. So there's a whole load of different things that we can do in recovery. If I give you a sort of list of a few, breath work and meditation, reducing your caffeine intake, time in nature, hanging out with friends, having a massage, less alcohol,
all the good stuff, basically. All the nice stuff, all the stuff that perhaps gets sidelined because you're not prioritizing yourself, because you're prioritizing others around you, or you're just frantically getting through the to-do list because it feels like it's coming at you. And I suppose then that's the hardest decision to make, because then you have to intentionally make those breaks, and you don't want to leave it until it gets to the point that you are ill, because you may feel yourself going that way. Or I presume you also have a picture where people get ill more frequently because obviously their immune system is saying, help, we're not getting the energy, as you said, the energy requirement we need to keep you well, to fight off infections and so on.
Exactly.
And sorry, go on.
And so your initial signs of being stressed are first of all, you have that sort of acute stress moment of feeling a bit hotter, feeling a bit flustered, maybe sort of anxiety, perhaps you get sweaty palms, that sort of thing, and that can come and go in an instant, and that's kind of your acute stress moment. But once you start having frequent coughs and colds, start getting more injuries, start having just these things that are becoming a bit of an inconvenience and a niggle and everything, if we don't pay attention at that point, then we move on to actually quite serious disorders, diseases, etc. So it's being very aware of not just how you feel in the moment, but also how you're feeling overall. And are you is that Achilles heel, that sort of cold sore or whatever it is that gets you when you run down? You know, that is a sign to say, okay, we're beyond that kind of acute stress moment. We're now in a longer term thing, and actually it's time to do something about it.
Yeah. And if, like, as it was for me, your sleep goes, you know, I had a very specific time of life and solution, luckily, from that. But it's, you know, you can't function, especially when sleep's affected. You just can't function during the day. But you also can't if you're getting ill all the time and you're having to take time out, and these things are becoming repeated. And I think what you're saying, which comes up a lot on this podcast, is it's tuning into that ability to listen to what your body is saying, because I think the mind is so good at overriding what's happening, how we're actually feeling, and saying, oh, it's okay, I can manage, when perhaps, you know, you haven't slept well. There's something in the diary that you could, if you're honest, take out and actually fill that with just a bit of recovery or a nice gentle walk. But you don't, because you want to get it done. And that's the mind not listening, when that could scupper you in 2-3 weeks' time because you haven't listened. So yeah, it's such great advice. And I love the way that it is such a holistic look at everything you're doing. What one's body is doing, everything that is affecting our lives. And it's so important also to talk about stress, because it's banded around so much, but what that does to us, and being able to pay attention to how that affects us daily and whether we are under stress, being really honest about that, I think is the hardest thing. Because there's so much sort of common narrative. There's like an ownership of busy that's like we're meant to be like that, like as a badge, and it's just not, is it? Because you're not going to win the race. If you do own it. I think we've all got to achieve the balance that's right for our bodies. So tell me, where can people find you? Because obviously you're doing a course, is that right?
Oh, yeah. So I have the Energy Lab, which is a 12-week online group coaching program for up to 10 women, aimed really at sort of, midlife working women, or not even necessarily working, but, you know, busy women. And that is, well, it's starting on the 7th of April. But then there's going to be other ones as well. This one's a 12-week one, but there's going to be some shorter ones as well, like 6 weeks or so.
Amazing.
So that's on my website, which is a rather long website, humanenergyoptimization.com.
Perfect.
And my Instagram handle is the same, Human Energy Optimization. But that I'm more native on LinkedIn than Instagram.
You're a LinkedIn person.
Yeah.
Okay. With the course, people might be wanting to ask, do you get to track data as part of the course?
Yes. And in the future I'll run ones that have the tech and ones that don't as well.
Fantastic. Amazing. So if you want that extra insight, then it'd be super useful. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us today, Sophia. It was super, super interesting. And I hope everyone is now thinking about how they can give themselves some time to rest and recover, as well as be active and so on, to get the most out of life.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Before I wrap up, if you've enjoyed this episode, I'd really appreciate you taking a moment to rate and review Make Movement Matter on your podcast platform of choice. It genuinely makes a difference in helping the podcast and my message reach more people. And if something in this conversation resonated, I'd love you to get in touch to tell me how. Share a clip or a takeaway over on Instagram and tag me when you do. That's one of the best ways this message continues to travel. If listening today has made you curious about your own movement, not just exercise, but how you move through everyday life, and you'd like support to feel more comfortable, capable, and confident in your body, you can find everything over at reclaimmovement.co.uk. You'll find simple ways to get started, like my mini course, Happier Hips in 5 Steps, my 8-week signature course, Reclaim Everyday Ease, or access to a library of short movement videos and longer classes designed to help you integrate healthy, natural movement into real life, not add another thing to your to-do list. Thank you so much for listening and for being part of this community that's helping make movement matter in everyday life for life. Tune in again next week. And if you never want to miss an episode, you can sign up to be notified by email when new episodes are published by visiting the podcast webpage at reclaimmovement.co.uk/Make Movement Matter podcast. And in the meantime, happy moving more naturally.